What's up everyone, I'm Eldridge and welcome back to my series on the Camelot Unchained class reveals. First of all, I'm just going to stop pretending that these videos will be done on Saturdays, because that's just not how it works. Generally I have to do a bit of reading up, I have to find all the pictures, I have to make some pictures, capture some footage, and then on top of that I also have to think of some jokes so these videos aren't too dry. And I just simply can't manage doing the entire video on a Saturday, so in the future I'm just gonna say it's gonna be on Sunday. However, let's get to the class reveal now. This week's revealed class trio was Jay, and they turned out to be the Shapeshifters, which is actually a bit of a surprise. I know that some people thought that there were going to be two sets of stealthers, Veiled Walkers and Veiled Stalkers. Others thought that this would be basically the light fighters. We had the heavy fighters last week, and that these would sort of be offensive, melee, damage-dealing warrior types. And while these shapeshifter classes are offensive melee damage dealer types, they are definitely not warriors and they are definitely not generic. They are something very special. So let's start off with the Arthurian shapeshifter, the Enchanted Knight. This class is based on the folklore figure of Menu, who was the first Enchanted Knight, a shapeshifter at Arthur's court. He also happens to be a prominent character in the Welsh Arthurian tale Camelot Unchained, in which he is handpicked by Arthur to help Camelot in his quest to find Olwen, daughter of the cruel giant Ysbaddaden, and win her hand in marriage. In Camelot Unchained, the Enchanted Knight can transform into one of three forms: the Griffin, the Basilisk, and the Demon. The Griffin is your sort of main melee damage dealing form, with a lot of slashing and piercing attacks that also cause a lot of bleeding and armor rending, with styles like Relentless Dismemberment focusing on doing periodic and escalating damage. The Basilisk form focuses on debilitating diseases and uses them to debuff, cripple, and presumably crowd control enemies. The Demon form provides the Enchanted Knight with some reach in the form of chaotic magic attacks. For anyone who knows a bit about Welsh folklore, the Basilisk and the Griffin are very important mythological creatures in that area. The Griffin being on the flag of Wales to this day. And while from today's perspective the Basilisk maybe isn't the most terrifying of creatures, unlike the fierce shrubbery weasel, I mean look at this little guy, he's fantastic. The Basilisk is still a ferocious creature featured in a lot of Arthurian tales. And meeting a basilisk in those stories generally ends in a lot of paralyzed and dead people. The presence of demons in Arthurian tales always really confused me a bit, because demons really have no basis in Celtic mythology. And make no mistakes, the Arthurian tales are in part definitely based on Welsh and Scottish Celtic mythology. But I'm guessing, like with everything, Christianity has just put its big nasty fingerprint on the Arthurian tales, and as such demons and the devil just made their way into them. As we learned in the stream, the Enchanted Knight is supposed to focus on one form for an entire fight and not necessarily switch during a fight. And if you have to switch during a fight, that should be difficult for you. This of course means that it's going to be a lot easier to make these individual transformations a lot more powerful than those of the other realms shapeshifters. Because if you're not able to switch that easily in combat, you have to rely on one transformation, and then that transformation can also be a lot more broad and useful. Which allows the Enchanted Knight to have three forms that do very specific things. And it does allow the Enchanted Knight to have a form that focuses entirely on melee damage, and also have one that focuses entirely on ranged magic damage. And I think that makes the Enchanted Knight a pretty damn cool class. Next we have the Viking Shapeshifter, the Child of Loki. Loki is the Germanic god of trickery, deceit, disloyalty, and betrayal. Basically, to all you Christians out there, it's sort of our version of Satan. The embodiment of everything Azatru followers perceive as evil. I always think it gives you a really good insight into people, learning what they perceive as evil. According to folklore, Loki had 3 sons and a daughter. His 3 sons, Fenrir, Sleipnir, and Jormungandr, are the 3 forms a child of Loki can take in Camelot Unchained. Isn't that really meta? Gift of Fenrir transforms a child of Loki into a wolf, granting life-stealing when armor is penetrated, and they can also buff allies and debuff enemies with howls. The Gift of Sleipnir transforms a child of Loki into a horse, granting movement speed and charging effects, making it a good form to initiate fights or to maybe even run away. And the Gift of Jormungandr transforms the child of Loki into a serpent, granting all kinds of nasty venom attacks that buff each other up relentlessly to create the nastiest super venom. All 3 of these creatures are very important in Germanic mythology. Sleipnir, for example, is Odin's magical 8-legged horse that gets him around the 9 worlds. It has a lot of very important shamanistic implications, because it symbolizes the connection between Midgard, Asgard, and Utgard. And spoiler alert, during Ragnarok, Fenrir is going to kill Odin and then eat the sun, ending all life on all worlds. As we learned in the stream, the child of Loki is meant to swap between forms a lot. And while this is of course going to make for an interesting playstyle, where children of Loki will switch between their forms a lot and will be able to utilize all sorts of different combinations of abilities, it will also mean that the entire class will have to be balanced around that fact. And it will probably result in each of the transformations to be a little less powerful than, for example, the Enchanted Knight's transformations. Because whereas the Enchanted Knight mostly is going to be stuck with one, the children of Loki have access to all of them during any given fight. And as such, their sum of abilities cannot be all that much more powerful than any single transformation of the Enchanted Knight. And then last but certainly not least, we have the Dullahan class, which is the black rye. Wait a second. There we go. The Dullahan. The Dullahan of Irish mythology is an unseelie fairy, a rider on a black horse, carrying his severed head under one arm, and using a human spine as a whip. His face pale and the color of moldy cheese, with deep black ever-darting eyes, and a smile that runs from ear to ear. The Dullahan serves no lord, only death itself. And where the Dullahan halts his horse, someone is about to die. The Dullahan will speak a name, killing the person immediately. The legend of the Dullahan has spawned many offshoot folklores, such as Dark Riders, the Headless Horseman, and let's face it, why wouldn't it? It is totally and entirely badass. The legend is also closely related to other Celtic sort of horse evil creatures, such as the Nucalavi of Scottish folklore, except that the Scottish have a bit more of a thing for scary horses by themselves. In Camelot Unchained, the Dullahan's shapeshifting works on an escalation basis. Through presumably combat, your dark powers increase, allowing you to become more and more, well, Dullahan. In the first stage of defilement, as it's called, the Dullahan has access to attacks with the spinal spear weapon, which can cause bleeding and spread panic. In the second stage of defilement, the Dullahan severs his head and can turn it into a projectile attack and then use it as a point of origin for their spells. In the third stage of defilement, the Dullahan grows a bone armor and increases damage of death abilities. This escalating shapeshifting means that the longer a fight goes on, the better the Dullahan will be. But at the same time, they will be weaker than the other shapeshifters upon engaging, to balance out this fact. Now I know I didn't go into too much detail on the abilities this time, and the reason is because there are so many damn abilities that we were shown. Obviously, we had to be shown a lot of abilities because it's harder to understand what a certain class is going to do if it has so many different transformations. You can't just spoil a transformation and then maybe one ability from that and figure out what the class does. And so it was of course necessary to show a bunch of abilities. I think that CSE is on an absolutely great path with these shapeshifters. All three of them look really interesting. And I love that they managed to have 3 shapeshifting classes but have 3 completely different mechanics on how they utilize their shapeshifting. So not only are these 3 completely different from another thematically, they're also very different in how they work and what they're going to bring to a team. And I just absolutely love that. Now let's come to the question of which realm won this specific round. As you all know, in week 1 I voted for the Abbot as the coolest class of the Devout Trio. And the second week for the Archers, I voted for the Forest Stalker, and a lot of people disagreed with me. But I stand by that decision because I think incorporating sort of what the Animist did in Dark Age of Camelot with an Archer is a really cool and interesting idea. In the third week, I voted for the Mjolnir simply because it is such a badass and iconic class design that a lot of people are just going to love. And in this fourth week, I simply have to pick the Dullahan. For years now, whenever I play an MMORPG and I play some kind of warrior in heavy armor, I have been naming my main character Dullahan. I love the legend of the Dullahan. I think it is one of the coolest evil creature myths of all time. Crap, I just realized now that there's a Dullahan in the game, I'm gonna need a new name for my main character. Maybe Black Rider. No, I got it! Headless Horse Donkey! So far, the Dullahan is definitely my favorite class revealed, but I'm not entirely sure if I'm actually going to play it as my main class. Because wherever the news about these shapeshifters has surfaced, everyone loves the Dullahan. Everyone loves it. And so I have kind of a bad feeling that it might be a really overpopulated class if it ends up being as cool as it sounds. And if that's the case, I'm just gonna be a sucker again, aren't I? I'd play something stupid that nobody else wants to play, but that's really important for the team. For example, I know some people were really disappointed with the Enchanted Knight, saying that it was too generic. And to those people I say, you should really go read up on your Arthurian legends, especially the Colocha Galwin story, because Menu is a badass. Right guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's presentation and speculation on the class reveals. Do make sure to let me know in the comments what you think the coolest class reveal of this week was. As I said, from now on the videos will go up on the Sunday after the class reveal, so let's see what week 5 brings us. But until then, I've been the Cloaking Donkey, and I'll see you in another video.